Good day, everyone. 'Tis I, the Blue Baron, defender of traditionalism. Before I start, I just wanted to say how thankful I am to each and every one of you for helping me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. I also wanted to say a special thank you to my first patron along the way, Lucas White, and my current patron, A Goofy Movie. I didn't plan for this to be the next video to come out after reaching 1,000 subscribers, but it happened that way, and I'm so glad it did, because we've got a very special video for you all today. Today we'll be discussing something a bit different, but well within the range of our usual topics. We talk a lot about Disney here at Blue Baron Productions, and with good reason. One of the first stepping stones to my being a traditionalist in life was being a Disney traditionalist, hence the term traditionalism. But today we're not just reviewing a show or film, rather we'll be talking about a very specific Disney tradition, which today sadly is going through controversy. True Love's Kiss. True Love's Kiss has been part of Disney since the one that started it all. It shouldn't be viewed as controversial, but rather as wholesome, romantic, chivalrous, and, yes, magical. And to help explain why that is, we'll have a special guest joining us today. So now, direct from her kingdom, it is my great honor to introduce Sleeping Beauty herself, Her Royal Highness Princess Aurora. Good day, Your Highness.
Hello, Blue Baron. It's wonderful to be with you here today.
Thank you for joining us, Princess Aurora. How has your life been at your castle?
Oh, it's been quite splendid. Prince Philip and I have actually been planning a festival in the castle gardens for the people of the kingdom. It brings back such wonderful memories of my time in the forest with the good fairies.
And, of course, when I first met Philip in the forest, and how, after I fell into a deep sleep from Maleficent's curse, he fought through a very different forest, one of thorns, and awoke me with the true love's kiss.
Indeed, that was truly wondrous. And yet, some people see True Love's Kiss in another light. They believe that his kissing you while you were in this deep sleep and thus unconscious was non-consensual, and because of that, they see it as an act akin to sexual harassment.
Oh, goodness, I don't believe that's the case at all. In fact, while I was under the curse from Maleficent, I would have wanted nothing more than a kiss from Prince Philip. I do wonder why people would think that this was some form of harassment.
It is certainly something to wonder about. Certain people today, usually a particular type of people, tend to place far too much importance on the notion of consent, so much so that they'll make it the basis of whether any action between two people is morally acceptable. To them, any act done to someone without express consent is automatically bad, and any act done between people who both consent is ipso facto good, or at least acceptable. So rather than judge this action by the authentic love between the parties involved, the intention behind it, or by its reflection of the ultimate spiritual forces of good and evil which set it in motion, they merely judge it based on the fact that you weren't awake to say you wanted to be kissed.
Oh, I see. Well, I do believe we should consider the nature of the action itself. In this case, simply a kiss, and realize that it was done for good and for love. The notion of consent is important in many instances, yet it can be taken too far. To ignore the action itself and to claim that any action between two people without consent is wrong ignores the fact that there are good actions and there are bad actions, regardless of whether people consent to them or not.
Precisely. And that is very much the main point of morality in its objective nature, that there are good actions and bad actions regardless of who does or does not believe them to be so. Prince Philip's kissing you was certainly done for a morally upright purpose, out of love, with the purest of intentions. One might even say out of the highest moral good, the fulfillment of a predestined spiritual will. After all, it was the good fairies who turned Maleficent's evil curse into something ultimately good, so foreordained that, not in death but just in sleep, the fateful prophecy you'd keep, and from the slumber you would wake, when true love's kiss the spell shall break.
Yes, Merryweather certainly knew what she was doing when she changed the curse so that I could be awakened by true love's kiss. The good intention of saving me on the part of the fairies and of course Prince Philip is what truly matters. Also, the people who criticize true love's kiss are overlooking the fact that asking permission for the kiss would ruin the moment and the spontaneity of it. If one has true and noble intentions at heart, they should not need to ask permission for everything they do. And of course, with me and my friend Snow White, who was also under a cursed sleep, it would have been impossible for our princess to ask permission.
Indeed so. And you are indeed correct that if one has true and noble intentions at heart, they should not need to ask permission for everything they do. The trouble, I think, is that the people who criticize this cannot imagine that true and noble intentions were at heart because of their own assumptions about the very nature of a kiss itself, that it must be inherently sexual in some way.
Yes, and that's very unfortunate.
These people who complain about you and Snow White because they wish to emphasize that sexual conduct with someone not conscious is non-consensual don't realize that there was actually nothing sexual about these two kisses, nor about kisses in general. There is nothing wrong with kissing a sleeping person. Parents kiss their children goodnight all the time, even after the child has fallen asleep. This is a tender, loving moment that can be replicated if one remembers its mindset. Sadly,
Yes.
People do not seem to have that mindset.
Yes, you're right, Baron. I'm sure that children would never suppose that a kiss from their parents was anything but a loving action. And this, of course, can translate to those who are no longer children. I wonder why people would think that to kiss someone is necessarily sexual.
I wondered that myself for many years. Eventually, I came up with two theories for why people would see an inherent sexuality in kissing, or hugging for that matter. Theory one is that they were never kissed goodnight by their parents or even hugged in it, so do not know that a kiss can be innocent and loving. Truly a sad thought. Theory two, they themselves cannot imagine an innocent kiss because they themselves would only kiss someone for the purpose of sexual gratification. Truly an even sadder thought, but one which I think even more likely. It's a known fact that when people have temptations to do something, They project these temptations onto others, either knowingly or unknowingly. If one does something often enough, they'll think everyone else does it too, and eventually they won't be able to comprehend that someone wouldn't do it. This is especially common with people's sexualized mindset due to the overabundance of pornography usage today, which has been scientifically proven to cause physical and chemical changes in the brain that alter one's perception on the world around them. For those people that watch this sort of thing, almost everything is seen as sexual. For people who don't, almost nothing is seen as sexual.
Those are very insightful theories, Baron. One would hope that people with these sorts of mindsets can be helped to see things more reasonably, rather than tainted by the sexualized culture. These stories do indeed have wonderful messages of purity and true love, and it's very disappointing that people could criticize them for this. Do you think that it's possible for those who criticize True Love's kiss to change their mindset eventually?
I believe it would be possible, though probably not easy. As I see it, since the root cause of their mindset is the modern sexualized culture and how it has affected them, they would have to first realize, likely in stages, the non-sexual nature of the events in these stories, as well as the non-sexual nature of kisses in general. However, I think in order to fully realize that change in mindset, the underlying issue of immodest thought, itself the product of pornographic imagery, would have to be resolved in them. And this would be significantly harder than merely explaining the nature of a kiss. I suppose a good way of putting it is that those who have pure intentions will assume others' intentions are pure as well, while those who have impure intentions will assume others' intentions are also impure.
Yes, I once found it hard to believe that there were many people who wish others harm and see the world in a very negative way. Of course, when I discovered that I was cursed by Maleficent, I realized that there are many others like her whose impure intentions can trick us.
Indeed. I'm also reminded of an analysis I read of the story of your friend Snow White, specifically of the moment where, after the huntsman begs her forgiveness for trying to kill her, she is confused as to why it even happened. She says,
I don't understand.
He responds,
She's mad, jealous of you. She'll stop at nothing.
and she asks,
But who?
The Queen.
The Queen.
Snow White was not playing dumb, and this can get a bit annoying for people watching the film today. Truly, we think ourselves so wise in our cynicism. But because she cannot imagine wanting to kill anyone, she can't imagine anyone wanting to kill her. As the magic mirror named off traits of Snow White when the Wicked Queen asked who was fairer than she, so Snow White asks the huntsman who is so bad that they would want to kill her. And even after naming all of the terrible traits, Snow White, unlike Queen Grimhilda, still doesn't know who it is because her purity is purer than Grimhilda's evil is evil. Goodness will always assume the goodness in others as well. So perhaps the answer to how these people could change their mindset is for them to learn the virtue and purity exemplified by people in the very stories they criticize.
Yes, I do love Snow White. She's ever so sweet. It was certainly a shock for her to learn that the Queen was plotting against her. Yet despite all Queen Grimhilda did against her, goodness prevailed, and she was awoken by True Love's kiss, just as I was. I believe you're right, that others can learn the virtues exemplified in our stories, and hopefully that will change their outlook for the better.
Well, I do hope so. And if my coverage of that topic helps people to discover them, then all the better.
Yes.
I advertise myself, but I've done a video that covers these themes very well by demonstrating the virtuousness of Snow White. I won't give too much away for the sake of those at home watching, but it was the linkage of her nature to that of the ultimate example of feminine grace sung up in the final sequence of Fantasia, which not only forever convinced me of the virtuous qualities exemplified by Snow White, yourself, and your peers, but also forever changed my mindset to a more virtuous one as well.
Oh, that sounds lovely. I'm very glad princesses such as myself has inspired you. We also see True Love's kiss in other stories, though it goes by different names. We have Love's first kiss in Snow White, which awoke her from the curse of the sleeping death.
Yes, and with Princess Ariel, the kiss that Ursula said she had to get from Prince Eric was called the kiss of true love.
Then we have kissing a princess in Tiana's story, which was meant to turn a prince that was cursed into a frog back into a human.
And though I'm not as familiar with this one as most others, I seem to recall something about an act of true love in the story of the princesses Anna and Elsa.
Yes, the act of true love in Elsa and Anna's story is what thaws Anna after she had been frozen by Elsa's ice magic. It is true love that Anna has for her sister that revives her, for she sacrificed herself to save her sister. This act brings Elsa and Anna closer together after having been separated for so long. It exemplifies the same pure intentions that are behind the true love's kiss between a prince and a princess. And so, this act of true love, whether it is a kiss or otherwise, could have been between two sisters or between two people who have fallen in love.
That is beautiful and true on multiple levels, as it reflects the view of authentic love held in consensus by the great Christian philosophers of history for almost 2,000 years prior to the modern era. This Christian understanding of love is something sorely lacking today, but which seems perfectly demonstrated by the acts of love in these stories. It is that love is a choice. Love is a deliberate decision. Love is a willing of the good of the other. Love is an outpouring of self-donation to the other. Love is an offering, in other words, a sacrifice. This true nature of love can be called charity, for that is what one must call it for the sake of being easily understood against accusations of it being a feeling. Charity is a fitting descriptor because it is an act of the will, just like when someone decides to donate to a charitable organization or spend their time serving the poor in their community.
Yes, true love is indeed charity, for it's unselfish and it helps us live our fullest potential.
True love is not transitory, self-interested, and fleeting, but rather transcendent, transformative, and eternal. The West's Christian forefathers long believed this, for they were told and shown by Christ that the greatest love is to lay down one's life for another. This is no good feeling or chemical reaction. It is a choice and an act, a willful offering of one's whole self. And when I pondered your example of Anna sacrificing herself for her sister, I came to a sudden realization. This greatest love is shown in almost every one of these stories, either overtly or subtextually. I covered this underlying theme of the greatest act of love in my review of the symbolism of Snow White's story. And I see it just as well now in the story of the princesses Elsa and Anna. I can even look further now, to the subtextual inclusion of this theme in Prince Philip's act of saving you, or Hercules' act of giving his life for the life of Megara, just after she gave up her own life to save him. In fact, I'm also reminded of Pinocchio proving himself brave, truthful, and unselfish by sacrificing his life to save his father Geppetto from Monstro. And for that matter, there is a much more overt instance of someone sacrificing his life to save others in a far lesser known story from the land of Prydain. I feel like I've unlocked something amazing. I wonder how deeply this theme is woven into the fabric of the Disneyverse. I can even recall a scene from The Legend of Tarzan in which Tarzan, faced with death, is offered the opportunity to live with someone else in this world or with Jane in the next. And of course, he without hesitation says, "I choose Jane." This is most intriguing with its multiplicity elements, its many twists and turns.
Yes, that's a wonderful insight. We do indeed see this theme in many Disney stories. Another that comes to mind is when Eugene, also known as Flynn Rider, sacrifices himself to save Rapunzel. He cuts her magical hair so that she can escape from the witch, Gothel, even though she could have used it to heal him. This is also an act of true love, though it is not called this in the story. Both Rapunzel and Eugene are willing to sacrifice themselves, and this truly exemplifies the love that they have for each other.
That's true. I hadn't even thought of that example, but it fits perfectly as well. It's amazing, actually, how well these stories show this theme and how well they exemplify that the greatest and most heroic acts need not rely on physical strength, for a true hero isn't measured by the size of his strength, but by the strength of his heart. And so therefore, a princess need not learn to fight like a man as Mulan did, or attempt to be independent of a man as Princess Merida did in order to be empowered, but can instead be empowered by embracing what comes naturally to them as the fairer sex. Ladies tend to be more capable when it comes to their natural affinity for love and sacrifice. For whether it be maternal instinct or something much deeper, there is no question that the love they have, just as they are, most often will compel them to fulfill such sacrificial acts.
That's a very good point. There are many forms of strength, and physical strength is not all that matters. Indeed, it's often not the most important thing when one has a great strength of mind and heart. Whether that is love for one's family or between two people who have fallen in love, it is a strength that can truly move the world. And when we look at princesses such as Mulan, for instance, although she was a strong warrior, the greatest strength she showed was in sacrificing herself for her father. And it was this sacrifice and love for her father that led her to persevere in her journey.
Say, that's very true as well, isn't it? It's funny how often we forget that Mulan's motivation for doing what she did was out of the love she had for her father, who she could not bear to see die in battle due to his already existing injury. It did indeed lead her to persevere, and this was especially needed for her with all the difficulties she faced in just basic training. Part of what she had to go through as a female was the realization and reality that she could never be as strong as the men. Even if she had trained all her life, a man who trained all his life would still end up being stronger than her. But physical strength is not the only strength one can have. There are other strengths that females can have that men cannot. Childbirth, for one. But with Mulan, it was a skill individual to her, something that she had personally, whereas most men did not, which allowed her to succeed: strategy. In the training, everyone was trying to climb up a giant pole to retrieve the arrow, and no one was strong enough, not even the men. But Mulan realized that by wrapping the weights around the pole, she can use them as a counterweight to pull herself up. Her strategic thinking is further demonstrated at the Battle of the Tungshao Pass. Captain Li Shang knows enough of strategy to hold the last cannon to aim at Shan Yu himself. But Mulan takes this strategic thinking even further by realizing that she can use the cannon to cause an avalanche and wipe out the entire Han army all at once. Finally, in a truly poetic climax, it was her re-embracing of femininity as represented by her dress that allowed her and the others to climb the walls to the palace and approach the Huns unnoticed in order to mount a daring rescue of the emperor.
Yes, and we often see that those who claim to be feminists do not in fact support women, but only a specific idea of what it means to be female. They support women being entirely independent and scoff at the idea of being saved by a prince, whether that is by true love's kiss or otherwise. Yet they fail to see that women need not all be strong and independent, but can have strengths of other kinds that are just as valid. Bravery, kindness, confidence, elegance, and many more are qualities that the princesses strive to exemplify. Myself, Snow White, Rapunzel, Elsa, and all the others. Whether a prince saves a princess saves a prince, or someone saves himself should not determine whether someone is strong or not. To be awakened by true love's kiss is about love, and it doesn't make the princess any weaker.
Well said, Your Highness. Thank you very much for being here today, Princess Aurora. This was truly an enjoyable and enlightening discussion.
Well, thank you so much for having me speak with you today, Baron. I hope we've inspired some people to think more deeply about these stories of the princesses and other inspirational characters.
Well, I know one thing for sure. It's inspired me to think even more deeply about these things than I already have, and that's saying something. Well, folks, we're out of time for today. I hope you've all enjoyed this discussion as much as we have. God bless you all, and remember, Fides Traditio Monarchia.
You want to go to the Sadie Hawkins Day dance with me? Oh, maybe.
Does he love me? I wanna know. How can I tell if he loves me so? Is it in his eyes? I know you'll be deceived. Is it in his eyes? I know he'll make believe if you wanna know. If he loves you so, it's in his skin. That's where it is. Oh yeah. Or is it in his head? Oh no, it's just as strong. It is one break and need another turn to cry. No, I don't wanna learn the hard way. Baby, hello, oh no, goodbye. But you got me like a rocket, shooting straight across the sky. It's the way you love me. It's a feeling like this. It's centrifugal motion. It's perpetual bliss. It's that pivotal moment. It's impossible. This kiss, unstoppable. This kiss. Cinderella said to Snow White, how does love get so off course? No, all I wanted was a white night with a good heart, soft touch, fast horse. Brought me off into the sunset, baby, I'm forever yours. It's the way you love me. It's a feeling like this. It's centrifugal motion. It's perpetual bliss. It's that pivotal moment. It's impossible. This kiss, unstoppable. This kiss. You can kiss me in the moonlight on a rooftop under the sky. Oh, you can kiss me with the windows open while the rain comes pouring inside. Oh, kiss me in sweet slow motion. Let's let it slide. You got me floating. You got me flying. It's the way you love me. It's a feeling like this. It's centrifugal motion. It's perpetual bliss. It's that pivotal moment. It's a subliminal. This kiss. It's criminal. This kiss. It's the way you love me, baby. It's the way you love me, darling. It's the way you love me. It's a feel like this. It's centrifugal motion. It's perpetual bliss. It's that pivotal moment. It's a subliminal. This kiss. It's criminal. This kiss. One song, I have but one song. One song, only for you. One heart, tenderly beating, ever entreating, constant and true. One love that has possessed me. One love thrilling me through. One song my heart keeps singing. Of one love only for you.